So hold on. Let me ask you all a question. Have you ever sat down with a hot plate of swallow, put some rich egusi soup on top, added a piece of meat, and suddenly forgot that you were supposed to be eating slowly? I mean, yeah, I have had that. Because honestly, egusi soup is one of those food that doesn't need much introduction. I mean, once you smell that soup from the kitchen, you already know something delicious is coming to life. But have you ever wondered where egusi soup actually came from? How did ground melon seeds become one of those most loved soups across Nigeria and beyond? Well, let's take a little trip into the history of one of West Africa's most famous soups, Egusi soup. Egusi soup is deeply rooted in the food culture of West Africa. I mean, especially among different ethnic groups in Nigeria. The name Egusi generally refers to the seeds of certain melon like plants that are traditionally dried and ground before being used in cooking. And here's the interesting part. Egusi isn't simply one of one person's tribe. Different Nigerian communities have their own various versions of egusi soup, and each version has its own ingredients, cooking method, and a special taste. Among the Igbos, you will find egusi prepared in different ways and prepared with foods such as pounded yam, fufu, gari, and other swallows. I mean, the Yorubas also have their own method of cooking, while other communities across Nigeria and parts of West Africa have developed their versions. Some, instead of thinking egusi soup as belonging to only one group, it is better to see it as part of such a wider West African food tradition. Now, let's talk about the star of the show, the egusi seeds. Egusi seeds come from plants related to melons and gowns. Unlike the sweet melons we normally think about, these varieties are valued mainly for their seeds. The seeds contain certain amount of oil and protein, which made them particularly useful in traditional cooking. I mean, before modern supermarkets and packaged foods, people depended heavily on crops that could be grown, harvested, dried, and stored for later use. Okay, let me put it this in. Egusi seeds fits perfectly into that lifestyle. They could be dried and kept for a long time. And when it was time to cook, the seeds could be cracked, ground into a paste or powder, and turned into a delicious soup. That is one reason egusi soup became such an important ingredient in West African kitchen. And you know what I find fascinating? The soup wasn't created because someone was trying to make a fancy restaurant dish. It came from generations of people making use of the ingredients available around them. This is how many traditions prepare their food came to discover this specific dish. People look at what they have, experiment with it, combine different ingredients, and eventually pass the method down to their children. And over time, those recipes become part of the culture. Egusi soup is a perfect example of that. Traditional versions of egusi soup can contain leaf tea, vegetables, palm oil, pepper, onions, stockfish, meat, crayfish, and other locally available ingredients. The exact recipe can change from one household to another, and that's where these things get interesting. Ask 10 Nigerians how egusi soup is prepared. I might get 10 different answers. Someone will tell you, you must fry your egusi first. Another person will say, no, that's not how my mother does it. Someone else will say, add bitter leaf. Another, use ugu. One person wants plenty of meat, another wants stockfish and dry fish. And somebody somewhere will tell you that their mother's egusi is the original one. But honestly, That's part of what makes Nigerian food so beautiful. There isn't always one way to prepare a traditional dish. Food carries family history. A recipe can remind you of your grandmother. It can remind you of Sunday lunch. It can remind you of Christmas at home. It can even remind you of that one auntie who would cook enough food to feed an entire village whenever there was a family gathering. And egusi soup has become one of those dishes that brings people together. Historically, soups like egusi were not just everyday meals. They could also prepare during celebrations, gatherings, festivals, ceremonies, and important family occasions. Food has always been more than food. It is a way of welcoming people, it is a way of celebrating, it is a way of showing love, and sometimes it is simply a way of saying, please eat before you leave my house.